no matter what you believe, what is most important is your lived experience. So in your body, what cycle do you feel like you're in? Hello, friends. Welcome to another solo edition. It's been a little while since I've just been talking to you directly without a guest. I hope you've been enjoying the guest interviews lately. And I come to you just before the start of the new year for 2026. If you are not following the Gregorian calendar that said that, it's February the 10th today, right? So if you follow the Gregorian calendar, I can hardly say that word, which is just a line in the sand that someone put there that suits some people, but not necessarily others. Then 1st of January, obviously, is when we click over and say, well, it's 2026. But for me, and I don't know whether it's because my birthday is at the end of January, but it always feels like January is like a tidy up month, things coming to completion. And then I always feel this quite a big shift of energy. And what I put that down to is more so that for me, for someone who knows and loves traditional Chinese medicine, the way of looking at the new year through the lens of more Chinese astrology makes more sense to me. So I have always felt like Chinese New Year is more where my felt sense of a fresh energy and a new start for the year. And this year is no different. The other thing too that I want to mention is, I have been speaking about true sky astrology and human design versus tropical astrology and human design. Tropical astrology and human design are based on pinned points that are now no longer accurate. So when the collective is saying Neptune's moving into blah, 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 if you actually look up at the real sky, that is actually not what's happening. So generally, most human design and astrology is based on something that was correct thousands of years ago, around 300. I never remember whether it was AD or BC. Anyway, way ago, right? And now we know that because of the wobble of the earth, which is called the precession of the equinoxes, each year there is a slight change in the amount of time that process takes to happen from beginning to end, from one spring equinox, which is currently, according to tropical astrology, pinned. And the other thing that I'm still in a rabbit hole about trying to figure out is the spring equinox, which is the start of the zodiac, in inverted commas, heavy inverted commas, has been pinned to the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, which is where 0 degrees Aries used to be thousands of years ago. Now, where does it leave all of us that live in the southern hemisphere? Because I hear all the time, and it drives me bonkers, I'm going to be really, really honest, it's been like a soapbox I've been getting on lately. And I actually looked at the numbers. This is interesting. So there's 8.67 billion people in the world, according to Google, when I was looking at this the other day. And no, sorry. I'm not sure if I've got that figure correct, but there's 6.97 billion and change in the northern hemisphere and only 1 point something billion in the southern hemisphere. So I'm like, is the fact that the entire planet seems to talk like the only time a spring equinox happens is the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere? Meanwhile, I'm sweating my eyebrows off down here in the southern hemisphere. And so when people say, January's not the start of the year, the spring equinox is, I'm like, but the spring equinox for us is in September. So does that mean that we have to flip our astrology on its head, or we're saying that, no, we're not in 2026 until September, or we've already been in 2026 since September? The whole thing actually does my head in. But anyway, long story short, I think that the most important thing is feeling into your felt sense in your body of what cycle you feel like you're in. So I know, and I've shared many times on this podcast, that my energy is so much higher in spring and summer in the southern hemisphere compared to what it is in autumn. I kind of start slowing down, but in wintertime, I go into full-on hibernation mode. Now, as you'll hear later, that's not going to be an issue this year because something is changing. But for me, my felt sense is I always get an upsurge of energy in springtime here. So around the end of August, beginning of September, when we start getting warmer days and I start this, I feel like there's this spring energy. So in traditional Chinese medicine, the spring energy is about the beginnings of things. So often we'll launch my flagship programs in September because that's when I feel the upsurge of energy, right? And then this time of the year, I almost always get a feeling, and especially this summer in Australia, this summer, or at least where I live, which is in Queensland, our summer has been long and it has been hot, way longer than it usually is. So usually we start getting high 30s, early 40 days, which is like 95 to about 105 Fahrenheit, for those of you who don't know what Celsius is. And usually that's from maybe some days in December, and then we have most of our high heat days in February, and then autumn comes. And I know you guys call that fall, but autumn comes and it starts to feel better. So usually we have this beautiful springtime, September, October, November, where it's warm. It's, you're starting, or I feel in my lived experience, that my body wants to move more. My brain is more active. I often get good, creative ideas, often in excess. And there's this lull between the winter hibernation and this really high part of summer. But this year, country Queensland, Australia, just skipped completely the springtime. Completely. We went from cold winter to weeks and weeks and weeks, and it continues now, weeks and weeks of above 35 degrees, which is, I think that's around about, it's low 90s, say. And I just get to the stage in that high summer period where I go through another dip in energy, and then around about the middle of February, when things start to, it's not that our days are much cooler, but you definitely get that feeling of autumn in the air. Like I was out early this morning walking my dog and was like I don't need a jumper, but I can feel the autumn breeze coming in, right? And that is when I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Then I have a fresh surge of energy again, which kind of feels like the New Year surge, and then rinse and repeat. No matter what you believe about tropical astrology, tropical human design, what is the start of the year? I guess the other date to throw at you too is the beginning of the true sky or true sidereal human design year, when the gate that starts the human design year comes in, is February 23rd, where I live. It may be the day before for anyone up top, because obviously Australia is further ahead than most of the world. Chinese New Year, I'm pretty sure this year is the 16th or the 17th of February. And then we've got the Human Design New Year in True Sky, which is the 22nd, 23rd. And then people that believe in tropical astrology and human design will have other dates. I think personally, no matter what you believe, what is most important is your lived experience. So in your body, what cycle do you feel like you're in? And, I'm often saying to clients, never make the mistake of comparing your winter to someone else's spring, because we all go through these cycles, whether it is like a life cycle thing, like most women will have a change in energy around the menopausal transition or perimenopause. If you're still cycling period-wise, you might have very clear seasons of that, however long your menstrual period is, where you're like, oh, today I'm feeling less outward and less energized. And then other days I'm like, oh, okay, let's go. Let's start projects. And then, of course, there's lunar cycles, etc. Anyway, I don't know why I started that entire conversation. That was like a big side quest. I think just to say, I don't feel like it's been the new year yet. And I also am really, really clear that I have been in a retreat stage. I haven't had any desire to share on social media. I've actually had social media off my phone. It must be for almost 4 weeks. And there is a voice in my head going, hello, you need to talk to people, because otherwise how do they know you're there? But there's a bigger part of me that's just going, you know what? Just trust life, trust your life force energy, and trust that if you don't have anything to say, you don't have to say anything. And this is something I would say to everybody in marketing. I am a big non-believer in the idea that everyone markets the same, everyone has the same energy cycles, etc. And that's why I folded in True Sky Human Design into voice and visibility and the magnetic messaging and even wealth and visibility energetics. Because to me, when I look at a chart, I can see the flow of your energy and the ways that you are most likely, and it's not a prescription, it's not a rule box, but the ways you are most likely to want to cycle through in terms of what is the better marketing strategy that might fit you better. What is something that will most likely be an Achilles heel visibility wise, unless you have already done the work to move into the higher expression. I really hate using higher or lower expression because to me, they're both really important and I don't like hierarchy. So how am I going to say that? I like to use the terms, well, I mean, my human design teacher, Annalena Fuchs, uses genius and challenge, which I do love. I would almost want to say genius and invitation because the genius is when you're in, the highest expression. If you use the gene key language, that's more like the gift in the city. But what I don't love about anything that is a hierarchical thing is that people miss the understanding that the gift, the genius, the city, whatever it is, comes out of the mud of the shadow, right? You don't get to one without experiencing the other. And I think that that's, my biggest issue with toxic positivity bullshit that you see on the internet sometimes is that constantly saying to someone, oh, you need to fix yourself, or oh, you need to only feel positive things, or affirmations will work. Well, that's great, but that's only one half of being human. Like you chose to be in a skin suit for a reason, right? You came down here to have an experience in a physical body. And with that comes the shadow and the light, the genius and the challenge, the things that you find easy and the things that you don't necessarily. And I feel really, really strongly that when we are trying to get people to focus on one size fits all strategies, or saying to them, you need to be in a summertime when you're not, you're in a wintertime, is really important. The other thing I'm feeling into with my design, and if you've listened to me bang on about True Sky before, you'll know that in Tropical Human Design, I come out as a 3-5 sacral generator. Very specific way of being in the world. Again, not rules-based, but I have spent, a couple of years feeling into that kind of identity. And one of the biggest things that I found with it is that some parts made sense to me and resonated and what agreed with my felt sense of being a Kylie, but other parts didn't. So it didn't feel 100% aligned. And then when I came across True Sky, in True Sky, my type is a 6-2 splenic, I was going to say projector. No, a 6-2 splenic manifester. So I feel like from the beginning of starting the human design certification that I'm currently doing, which is intuitive human design certification with Annalena Fuchs, and I think the waitlist is open now. So if you're interested in learning human design, but you do not want to learn it through the lens of dogma or the lens of tropical, which doesn't match what's going on in the sky, if that makes no sense to you, then you definitely need to check it out. And I will put that link in the show. So let me make a note. So yes, since I've started that training and since I have been feeling into, do I identify with being a 6-2 manifester, particularly splenic? And I have to say that if you'd asked me that about 6 months ago, I would have said, do you know what? My honest response to that when I asked that, what comes up, the like itty bitty shitty committee in my head is, you wouldn't have thought that you were a role model. The 2, absolutely. But the 6, and especially now having just turned 51 a couple of weeks ago, I would have struggled to feel into the identity of a role model. I have to say, over the last 6 months, as I've been feeling into things, I actually do highly resonate with both. And I'm noticing that when I challenge my own rules about how I do business and even relationships, and I actually go, I wonder what it would be like if I didn't have this condition in my head that said, once upon a time, not too long ago, I would not be standing here saying I haven't spoken on social media for months now, because I had a rule in my own head that said, to be successful in business equals consistency in marketing. Like you have to be showing up, blah, 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 blah. And now I'm feeling into that 2 line and I'm feeling into my very high need for retreat and my very high need for like a lot of integration and processing time. And then the other thing that's been happening practicality-wise is my website has been a 2-month project to get from one platform to the other platform. And so that has taken up a lot of my energy and focus. And it's been such a juicy journey because I've also had the chance to start decluttering. So I've only been back in business since 2023, so a couple of years. Yeah, 2 and a bit years, October 23 it was. But in that time, I have already accumulated a whole heap of stuff that did not feel like it wanted to come with me in the next season. So yes, the website was a huge project, but I feel like I've cleared so much space. Like I really have had this filter of like, and actually my filter for this year, like one of my big guiding words is joy. And so one of the things I've been asking myself is, does this offering, does this way of providing this service, does this service itself bring me joy? Does it feel like it is me and my genius? Or is it me trying to squish myself into a particular box? Or the other thing is, has it come to the end of its season? Like, has it just come full circle and it's come back to, okay, we're done? And so I've been doing a lot of that very intensive foundational work in my business, and I just haven't felt like I've wanted to come out and play. What I am noticing is that when I do not choose to push through based on a condition that I have, like marketing, that my system I've had this overwhelming, almost ratcheting down of my nervous system. Now, that also has to do with, again, some practical family matters that have become more sorted in the last little while. Thank goodness. Thank you. But I do feel like this really strong ratcheting down of my nervous system. And I don't want to simplify it and say that's because I'm allowing myself to live as a 6-2 manifestor. I think that's way too simplified. But I will say that a significant part of the journey from being a 3-5 generator or trying to make that work versus actually understanding that, and also as a manifestor, I'm not meant to be like chugging through like I always have done, that I really need to work on being reverent with my resources. And I've had a lot more rest too. And again, that contributes to the ratcheting down. So I guess where I'm coming from, that's been a long winding journey of saying, how are you doing in business in terms of being reverent with your resources? So making sure that you're in your genius zone, making sure that you are doing marketing activities in alignment with the way that you're designed and what makes sense for you, what feels accessible. Are you still trying to fit like one size fits all, whether it's from a particular coach you're working with or a particular way of doing business or something, and this is definitely for the blurpreneurs out there, if you haven't done my quiz, kyliepatchett.com/quiz, if you want to figure out what your visibility Achilles heel is, but one of them is the blurpreneur. And often a blurpreneur doesn't have this fixed sense of identity. So what we can do, and that includes like I have that center undefined, the G center. So if that's similar, this is where a lot of conditioning can turn up. It's not as simple as undefined center equals visibility block, but that is the pattern that I do see most of the time in my clients. So for a blurpreneur, what will happen is that when you don't have a clear sense of identity, the risk, I guess, is when you're being exposed to a lot of other people's messages. And this is one of the reasons why I chose to disconnect from social media. A, because it was just feeling ick. And also I was using it as a numbing and dumbing strategy, which I don't love. I don't love it when I get into that because I'm like, what are you not being present for? What are you trying to avoid? Like, how about we actually allow ourselves to feel our emotions instead of shoving them down by scrolling on a phone every night for like an hour just because. But also when I'm exposed to a lot of other people's messages, there is definitely a part of me that's like, oh, that's worked for her. I'll borrow that. And it's like, hang on a minute. A, do you want to do it like that? Does it feel like it's aligned to your values? Is it aligned to your energy? Is it something that actually is going to allow you to be in your genius? Or are you making another box, another condition, another rule that says to be a good business owner, you have to do it this way? So I think that is my like hashtag whole point of this episode is no matter what system, including astrology, human design, or coach, including strategy, including one size fits all, the whole point of working with a system like human design is to get to know yourself It is not to use it as an external source of authority. It is to filter it through your known system. So if you do not feel like there is a fresh vibe of being in a new year or a new season or a growth season, then you're not. Just because other people in the world say XYZ does not mean that you have to. And the human design dogma that I see, like, you are a manifestor, therefore you have to do that. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, there's, almost 9 billion people in the world. We can't just use 5 buckets, 5 types in human design and then say, because you fill in these 5 buckets, then that's how you have to behave. There's so much more nuance in a human design chart. Like, the buckets, the types, and the authority is like the least important, least interesting part of the way that you are designed energetically. The nuance that's underneath all of that, and this is why I'm loving Genius U readings, because every single reading is different. Every single reading is helping the beautiful human in front of me to really get underneath. Is there something that's a challenge? Is there something you want to move towards? Is there something that feels like it's a block or unattainable? And using your human design chart as just one tool, one kind of ball of wool to pull on, so that we can actually help you to get to know yourself. Self-mastery, self-compassion, self-awareness, self-love, surrendering to who you are. And likewise with any coach, like I'm always saying to my clients, like, this is the way that this is what I would guide you to do, or this is what maybe I could suggest. But the first thing I'm always going to say is, how does that feel for you? Like, deliver X, Y, Z. Someone asks me a question, I give a response. How does that feel for you? Because if you're not feeling it in your own body, you are just creating another cage to put yourself in. And every time you put yourself in a cage, whether it's a system or a mentor or a strategy or one-size-fits-all business model, all you're doing is stealing your own individual self-expression and your own individual energetics and mastery and genius coming out in the world. So no matter what cycle you feel like you're in, or no matter where you're actually getting your external advice, super important to feel it through your body. That is a very long way of getting you to the whole point of this episode, which is to say, in my retreat period, feeling into how I'm using my resources and all of those things, my husband and I had a little conversation that sparked an idea. And a bit of background about that. Actually, I don't think I'm going to share that in this episode. So I think that's all I want to say. External versus internal. External versus internal, like external answers, external validation, external conditions around whether you can feel confident or feel like you've got a successful business versus your internal felt sense. And what does success even mean to you? And what does feeling like you have a sustainable soul-fueled business mean to you? Because it's not going to be the same for you. I do have very exciting news with a new website. I have some new offerings, but I've also got a free True Sky human design calendar chart on there. So if you go to kyliepatchett.com/free chart, all one word, you can actually get your true sidereal human design chart. If you're familiar with human design and you want to just compare and kind of feel it through, tropical might feel like the right system for you, but if you've never looked at your True Sky chart and you're curious, I wanted to put that on my website so that it gave you the opportunity to check it out for yourself. So I'll put that link down below. The other thing is, if you are interested in understanding your own design through the lens of True Sidereal, I do still have Genius U readings and reports. So the report is just a standalone. I read your chart. It's all through the lens of voice and visibility. So all about specific parts of your chart that give you understanding about the ways that you're meant to market, the ways that you're meant to be structuring your business, and also the core things that ideal clients will ideally want from you and the way that your energy flows. So that's an overall report. Then you've got the chance of adding on an intuitive coaching session with it as well, if you so desire. They are still half price at the moment. I'll probably do that until the end of March. I'm having such a wild time I'm such a I learn and embody by doing. And so just having many, many, many charts, many, many, many beautiful humans, many rebel entrepreneurs, and the chance to actually do live sessions where you get to bring your challenge or your genius or your expansion desires, whatever it is, like what's kind of feeling like it's important. And then we look at it through the lens of this chart. And you get to respond live to, how can I put this into action? What does that mean for me? Is there ways that I can try and emphasize embodying this to see whether it actually feels true for you? What I love about this is it is the end of business done the same old, because we all know the paradigms in this world are shifting, and they're shifting rapidly. And if you want to be building a business and being a leader of new paradigms, you've got to stop doing it the old paradigm way. And the old paradigm way says it has to be a certain structure. It has to be a certain way. A successful business looks like X, Y, Z. It's all bullshit. Break the rules, break the mold. You're here to be yourself. So if that feels juicy to you, I would love to have you for a Genius You. And thanks for listening. It's been very cool to reconnect. And yeah, I hope you're having a beautiful day. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If this episode lit a fire in your body, in your business, deep down in your bones, please take a moment to drop a rating and review so more rebels just like you can find us. And don't keep this goodness to yourself. Share it with your disruptive rebel and revolutionary friends who are ready to roar right alongside of you. Until next time, stay wild, stay unapologetic, and stay fucking free.